Hi, this is Privateer Station, and today we're bringing you day 257 of Russian invasion into Ukraine, with Olexiy Arestovych, advisor to the Office of the President of Ukraine, Lieutenant Colonel, and Mark Feygin, Russian opposition politician. Today they talk about situation on the fronts, about new shellings in Sumy and Chernihiv region, about lack of success for Russian side near Bakhmut, and news from Kherson direction, where 10th of November is set as a cutoff date for evacuation. Can Russia be excluded out of G20? And continuous supplies of weapons to Ukraine are growing. Also, why is Russian missile terror slowed down? And 5 defense companies get nationalized in Ukraine. Enjoy. Hi, glad to see you all on Feigin Live. It is Monday, the 7th of November. My god, it's been a special day back in the day, right? In the USSR. It is 10 p.m. in Kiev, 11 in Moscow, and day 257 with Olexiy Arestovich. Good evening, Olexiy. Good evening. We have about 110,000 people watching us live. There is some decline in viewership, I suspect because we switched to winter time, and in Russia they didn't, so the gap widened, and it's a little too late for them. So it's up on you, our viewers, to support our channel, to share a link, make sure we get more subscribers. Please help us out. That is important. Especially the ones, if you have friends from Russia who haven't seen that, forward that to them as well. And if you are watching that in English, forward that to all those who need to see that or should see that in the English-speaking world. Subscribe to Feigin Live, to Olexiy Arestovich, and to the Privateer Station. Thank you so much. Alright, we haven't met yesterday, it was Sunday, but I think in 2 days there was some changes. Let's start with the front. Tell us what's going on there. So they shelled Sumy and Chernihiv region. Were they shelled from the territory of Russian Federation? Yes, they did. Now let's look near Svatova. This one is at 3 o'clock on this map, on the red side of it, near the road junctions. And we need to say that our troops continue their planned offensive in that region. There were some calculations, some bloggers calculated that we liberated about 37% of the territory that they captured since the beginning of this war in February. And we currently, our major task is not to let them advance anywhere as well. And we continue defeating them on different parts of this front, and our main task right now is to wear them out and destroy their newly mobilized capacity. As sad as it sounds, but our target is to destroy and kill as many of their invaders, soldiers, as we can before we can continue our offensive. Mobilized are suffering about 100 people per day at least, and that's conservative. Enemy is also trying to attack, tries to advance. They are in a state of short-term euphoria after getting more troops to the front. They are attacking near Avdiivka, Bakhmut, Solidar. Bakhmut not so much, they're actually changing attention to Solidar, to the north of Bakhmut. Of course, Pavlovka and Vuhledar, you can see that lonely red arrow at the bottom. And in Kherson, there is not too much change, but we're slowly creeping up on them. We're basically doing artillery offensive on Kherson region. We shell their positions thoroughly and then advance a little. And of course, we're destroying their communication lines and supplies. So if you read through the official messaging of our general command, we destroy 3 to 4 commanding point posts every day, several air defense systems, 3 to 4, some tanks, some infantry, some supplies. So roughly they lose about 1 battalion tactical group every day. Yep, that's about it, right? Yes. Okay, tell me about that story regarding the Marines from the far east of Russia. There were rumors that they lost 100 people. What can you tell about it? It's the 55th Brigade from the Pacific Fleet. They, first of all, were thrown under Mariupol back in the day, and they got kicked their asses by defenders of the city, and they actually went out for rotation and haven't been on the front for a while. And speaking of the group that invaded back in the day, the one that crossed our border in February, and first and second corps of LNR and DNR, they lost, depending upon detachment, they lost from 30 to 70%. These are complete losses that will not be able to rejoin their detachments. So in reality, you were saying that they also lost 100 people now in the recent attacks. So after this attempt to attack our positions, they said they lost more than they lost during the whole first war in Chechnya. In Chechnya, this brigade lost about 65 people. So even if they lost 64, that's a notable number. And they actually wrote a collective letter to one of their regional leaders of the region in Russia where they're from, which is generally a bad sign because anytime military people are starting to write joint letters, that's a bad sign. And they wrote it to the regional leader. So regional administration, they're not military, right? Why do they write to him instead? Well, don't know about the politics, but basically he came back to them after 2 days of thinking, saying that no, your losses are fake, it's fake news, and we're just doing harsh offensive. And the problem is that they actually were giddy to push across the border, across the front line with us so much that they jumped between two of our positions to Pavlovka, and now they're sitting there, sitting ducks. All their supply lines are between two our detachments that keep shelling and shooting them. So our command at that part could, make a special victory dance and scream and bring something for the military luck. Because basically, what they're doing now, remember old games back in the 80s where you would torpedo a ship? You'd be watching in that little periscope and torpedoing ships passing by. So that's what our troops are doing. They can shoot up everything that moves to Pavlovka, to where they are, along the supply lines. And now they're sending message out that they already lost about 300 people, but it's both killed and wounded. They cannot resupply. So their sanitary losses, overall medical losses, are about 300. This is a battalion tactical group, so that is super sensitive for them. This is very sad position where they are. There are also some videos from their positions. I'm sure you probably have seen some on Telegram. And it is a sad picture. It's basically an open steppe. They are trying to dig there. They're getting shelled with artillery, and they can't really retreat or they can't really continue. So it is a very sad place where they push themselves into. Okay, let's get back to the mobilized. We have a video. It's everywhere now. You probably have seen it. How general came to face Kazan mobilized people, and somebody posted on the line on the interwebs. So you probably have seen it. I just want to share it with our viewers. I think most people saw it. It's pretty interesting. It's what we predicted, just like that picture. Get the heck out of here. Get the heck out of here. Shame. Shame. Questions. Questions. Answers. How do you make your bed? What are we doing here in the field? Where are the dryers? Push the regime. Push the regime. Silence. Silence. Traitor. Traitor. Please be silent. Have you seen the schedules out there posted for you? Why are you up? There is a schedule for you to follow. Inaudible. Please answer. We have a lot of questions. You called us pigs. You need to apologize for that. This is your guilt, General. You have to answer. Your ass is in heat. You're also in warm quarters. We're here in the fields freezing. Why the F are you wearing this uniform? You're no general. Why the F are you drunk here? How dare you come drunk to us? So, why is it interesting for discussion? There are a lot of videos like that. It's not just one. We've seen numbers. What's peculiar about this one? Of course, they're demanding firewood, demanding dryers, demanding better conditions, but complete lack of any respect to a commander. General, officers, he probably had a couple colonels around him with a complete despicable attitude to them in this crowd. Of course, a crowd, not single-handedly. And speaking blatantly, yesterday your local police could fuck you up. Now you can just do the same with your general. From the military experience, these units are never sent to the front, right? They usually get split and sent. Or no, Mark, or they're being sent altogether to the very front. Right, right. So they waste them quickly and then a lesson to the others. So we'll see. We'll see how that unfolds. I don't think that situation differs from any other training place, training campground, because their material supply issues are colossal, and I do not see any motivation. They're asking for firewood, they're asking for heaters, but I don't know how they can fight. Mark, this is very, very different. There is a reason why detachment was always considered to be almost a family, and it depends upon the command, what the commanders are in it. And there are some brave ones among the ones who are being conscribed, who are being mobilized, but the thing is, they're not trained, so they get to the front, but they get killed real fast. Usually exactly because of that. They're too motivated, too brave to run, and they have lack of training, so they just jump out at our positions and get killed real fast. By the way, our people on the front are telling that their feeling is it's about 40% of mobilized troops on the front that they face. Already, right? Yeah, already. So the numbers that Putin and his gang are quoting, from 70 to 80,000, are already on the front. So overall, About 170,000 are in the war theater. 40% of them is about 60,000. So that's about right. Seems about right. At least in battle engagement, they're saying it's about 40% who are mobilized. And they're the first ones to die. Yeah, it depends. Some of them get shelled when they're just relocated to the front because they don't know how to, they don't know how to dig in. And what's very characteristic in these cases, their officers flee. The moment of attack, their officers run, and also they run for other reasons because people, when they're getting shelled, they get afraid and they stop being afraid of their officers. So officers are sometimes fleeing for their lives because people get angry. And when they realize where they are and how it will end for them, it's a little too late to think. But yeah, that's their sad reality. Our military, actually, some of my friends from the front described me several offensive maneuvers they tried to do with the mobilized troops. Very bloody and very sad for the attackers. And the problem is that they will fail to acquire any battle experience, and the ones who will succeed in getting that experience, there'll not be too many of them left. And there'll not be enough to train anybody or transfer that experience. So their bet on the mobilization with the way the war is being waged was a failed bet. It's most likely just prolonging the conflict for maybe another 2 to 3 months that they can last on these reserves. After that, they cannot really change the flow of this war. Alright, Russian propaganda is telling us that near Bakhmut, they're already fighting in Bakhmut itself. They moved somewhere, almost like 5 kilometers. No, this is bullshit, Mark. They have not even pushed hard near that place. They are trying more near Solidar, but even there, they're not progressing. There is no movement. They couldn't get any territory anywhere on the front. Also, let's take a look at Kherson. There have been some things unfolding there in the last 2 days, and it is of interest to our audience. So, on one hand, there is some public information showing up that some administrations left the area, some more people left the area, and they made official date till the 10th of November. They have a window till the 10th of November to use any of the means provided by Russian troops. After that, they'll have to rely on their own means. I don't know, swim or use ferry or whatever, if they want to go to the Russian side. So it's interesting, it's hard to predict what are they going to do there, because they either are going to defend the city or they're either going to surrender. Because a lot of Russian forums are talking about them failing to hold longer than 3 to 4 days if Ukraine troops attack the city. I don't think it's correct. In my estimation, they can easily hold for 3 to 4 months in that area. They are in a very tight defense formation now, and they have a lot of cadre and a lot of mobilized. They actually have some troops who have experience and who want to fight. Even though they're beaten up, they're still fighting proper. And it's difficult for our troops, that's what I can say. So it's a slow, meter by meter, paid by blood and shelled with artillery. So these announcements they make in their forums, I don't think they're correct. It doesn't appear that they're going to surrender in that area. They're actually fortifying that. There is some rotation, there is some change in the way they organize their front. They do that, but they don't, even on the second line, the shift of position doesn't mean that they're preparing for an offensive. Okay, so you think that our hopes for a quick deoccupation, they are not going to be fulfilled? Yeah, they Or, in my estimation, they're allowing the civilians to flee, and if anything, they're preparing for a hard defense, the whole defense there. I think your mic is connecting with something, and there is a lot of scrambling, and people are talking about toothpicks or something. Sorry, dear viewers, you need to concentrate on what Olexiy is talking, not on the side noises. Alright, 327,000 watching us, over 100,000 click the like button. Please continue sharing links to that stream, and subscribe to Feigin Live and to Olexiy Arestovych. Alright, let's touch a serious topic. We've been live for about 20 minutes almost. This one is about the G20 perspectives. I think we have just about a week left till the summit on Bali. There is a publication in Wall Street Journal, and I think you even commented on that the position of United States, that Sullivan transferred to President Zelensky, conveyed to President Zelensky, that United States are still rooting for some negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. And Mikhail Podolyak actually sent a tweet out saying that we're not against any negotiation, we just have terms. Russia needs to withdraw its troops first, and then we'll be ready to discuss. So he basically voiced the same formula that President Zelensky stated a few days earlier. So you're basically saying this is a provocation of Moscow? Yeah, this is an information campaign. How's it done? Tell us more. Very simply, they take a journalist who had some contacts, some liberal tower of Kremlin or unnamed official in Kremlin, and they basically pick the journalist and leak him as if some information as to that's what's going on. And professional journalists with a lot of experience, they usually grab on that bait and on that opportunity. It just means more viewership, and what's their other alternative? Stay quiet, say that they don't have any information? Let's talk about what? Mars exploration? Well, there are other journalists writing about Mars. So these things are possible. That's easy for them to organize that. Usually several politicians with attached X to their title. So there would be somebody from Italy, some mayor from Daugavpils, from Latvia. Usually these are people on the margins of political scene, but since we have media that are looking for sensation and hype and hate, they grasp on these opportunities and they start throwing them around, and all of a sudden we're facing that this is almost a consensus on the West, that this is a solved matter, and everybody's trying to talk Ukraine down, to sit down at the table of negotiations, and that we'll lose any support if we don't do that. So, 3 messages I sent today. The West is demanding negotiations from Ukraine with Russia. Second, if they don't talk, the West will take away their support. And the third is if Zelensky needs to cancel his decision about not talking to Putin ever. So all 3 of these points, complete bullshit. And frankly, why do we want to talk to Putin? He's a war criminal. We also strongly suspect he will not live to the end of this war. So why should we negotiate with a dead man? Oh yeah, I think you just hit the soft spot. I think somebody in Kremlin just beat himself. And our conditions are simple. We do have a position to negotiate, but we do require Russian troops to be withdrawn from the territory of Ukraine, down to the last soldier. After that, we are ready to discuss, and our terms would be to get war criminals to be prosecuted, to get reparations, and then we can address other things. But that's to discuss not with Putin. It's to address with the new political leadership of Russian Federation. And yeah, I said new military leadership, but I don't think you're wrong there. It may be military leadership at that point. So Russia is only screaming about negotiations, but their main position is leave us everything that we captured and we promise to not go further. These are not negotiations. This is not a negotiating position. This is an ultimatum. And we'll take that ultimatum and shove it up to them all the way up to Sevastopol. Some of them may like it. Careful. Oh, yeah, I heard many of them may like it. Yeah, right? They're very playful up there. Let's continue the topic of G20 summit. So, a message from Indonesia. Joko Widodo is saying that Russian leader doesn't seem to be coming to Bali summit. Financial Times is writing. So it appears he probably will not go. We have only about less than 9 days left. They would need to arrange a separate meeting with Biden in some bilateral format or multilateral. They don't have enough time to make any of these arrangements, and then he has no reason to visit this summit. And President Zelensky made a statement earlier, we did talk about that too. You know what? He didn't come to the summit, he doesn't want to come. What is he doing in G20? Perhaps let's exclude them. Let's exclude Russia from G20. It was kicked out from G7, G8. Why cannot it be excluded from G20? In your opinion, do you think there is a real chance to get rid of Russia in G20 until they finish the war? It is difficult to say because in G20 there are a lot of countries of so-called World South who still somewhat on the anti-colonial agenda, and they believe that the West, or peddling the theme that the West was oppressing them, or somewhat anti-West positions, find in their populations. So many of them are also dependent upon Russia in some parts economically, some of them politically. So I think they'll be avoiding that topic, that discussion. G7, they don't give a damn about Putin's Russia, but these G20, they likely will not make these decisions. Especially countries like India, we don't know where they are globally about their relations with Russia. They got out of the contracts, the oil contracts with Russia, but it's hard to tell where they are in general politics. Although, personally, I would kick Russia out of every organization as long as Putin is in power. Even from the stamp collectors and the club of lovers of bats or whatever, ornithologist, badminton, they got nothing to do there. Politics that Russia is doing is a complete and utter failure. It's a list of international war crimes, so it's time to kick their butt a bit out of every org. Okay, let's talk about China. After Scholz's visit to Beijing and after all the bows from China towards United States, in Ukrainian Pravda there was a publication here. Somebody snapped a screen grab that back in 2013, President Yanukovych, that was probably the only good thing he'd done. He actually signed something in Beijing during his visit there, a contract on the 5th of December 2013, according to which China will never use nukes against Ukraine and will provide support to Ukraine and will defend Ukraine if nukes are ever used against it. I understand the worth of this contract is probably less than its paper, but still, this is bringing the subject of Beijing towards a relation towards a possible use of nukes. So do you think G20, Biden and Xi can talk and perhaps they can bring up to some conditions from United States and a request from United States to China to talk to Putin because we're really getting tired. And okay, so you're asking if China may provide extra pressure on Putin's regime. Right, and the nuclear side of things. I think that matter is already settled. I don't think this is a threat much more because everybody, India, China, United States, and the collective West, impressed that on Putin's regime. So, as an option, I think this was pushed outside, and the moment they decided to go with mobilization, they picked a different strategy because using nukes this unpredictable escalation path and mobilization and infrastructure attacks, this is basically prolonging the conflict and begging for negotiations. These are two very different strategies, two very different pictures, mutually exclusive. And I think all of the countries, all of the major countries, did tell Russia that using of nukes is unacceptable. And that, remember, their propagandists in Russia screaming, the world will be a nuclear ash. So, yeah, no, that was propaganda. Regarding the perspectives of further advancement, Russian matter will be probably discussed as a part of bigger negotiations between China and United States, but the degree of that involvement and are Xi Jinping and Biden ready to figure out some global deal, maybe even non-formal? I'm not sure they're ready for that yet. And they probably will discuss their positions and just mention how they're going to take a stand on which issues. And I'm suspecting Americans at best may suggest to that they can normalize their relations with China a little more in exchange for some pressure from China on Putin's regime. But I'm quite sure that Iranian munitions, Iranian ammo will still continue to go to Russia. So I don't think there'll be anything factual coming out of that G20. Okay, so no hopes there. Now, talking about weapons and armor supply, you've been talking for months that it's not enough what is being sent to you. This is enough to defend the territory, but definitely not enough subpar to deoccupy. Well, they can be used for deoccupation, Mark, but it is going to be a slow deoccupation. Okay, so the question is in intensity. Is there Do you think it's still related to elections in United States? The West actually made a few decisions, and I'm surprised that Europe took some decisions, harsher decisions than the United States in some aspects, and Europe decided to, for the lack of better description, I guess, a proactive answer to Putin's threats. Oh yeah, so we can say it a militarization course, right? Yeah, I don't exactly like that formulation, but yeah, it's a general militarization. And it just takes time. So Europe is eager to support us more, but it takes time for them to revive their military-industrial complex, which was almost in a state of coma for the last 30 years. But we do see that quantity and quality and assortment of troops, of armor and weapons they're providing is growing. So the vector is right. And basically everything leads to Putin losing here in Ukraine, because losing in Ukraine, in essence, is the end of him. So there's no other option. Plus, the world position, it's easier to repel Putin now than to rearrange everything, because if they let Putin win, they basically affirm with every dictator in the world that you can go grab territory, fight a little bit, and then you're given that territory just because. This is not the plan for the countries of the world. It's one thing to put on the skewer some dictator like Putin and fry him real well, and the other thing is to rearrange the whole set of international agreements based on that new paradigm, and there'll be so many conflicts in the world that it's just not worth going that direction, so it's much more agreeable to finish Putin. And Russia is already, his regime is already at the last reserves. They've thrown all of their private war companies into this front. They already have about 40,000 troops here. They literally grabbed the last ones from from Africa, where they were protecting uranium mines. So those are gone. Those are here on the front. And Russia is scrambling, talking to North Korea, to Iran. Mobilization is failing. This is a one-way ticket for that regime and a much faster ticket than they initially thought. And I estimate February, March will be the dead end of it. They do need some time to prepare the mobilized troops to maybe buy a bit more Iranian trash and throw that on our heads. And maybe also to freeze Ukraine and to bully us into blackouts. So we can see all these attempts. But they're all leading to nowhere. It's just extension. In some aspect, this is the most boring aspect of part of this war, because we already see what will follow, but we just need to live that through. And perspectives for Mr. Putin and his gang are pretty grim. All right, today Minister of Defense Reznikov in Ukraine said that they got NASAMS missile defense systems and a couple others. Yeah, these are called air defense with missile defense capabilities. Is it enough, quantity-wise, to provide for a better defense from attacks? Not fully enough, not 100% enough, but definitely makes our situation better. Right. And what if they do a big missile barrage again? I don't think they will do that again, because they are running out of missiles. And what's the proposition of doing it when 90% are getting shot down? According to some data, they have only 140 Iskanders and several dozen of calibers. This is even below any red line. This is literally the last items they have left. And they need to wait till Iran supplies them with a bit more. So they can rely on Iranian missiles, maybe, if they get them. And they are not too well known to the world, because Iran hasn't used them and we haven't shot them anywhere. So it'll be interesting to see, but we'll probably be the first country that will get a first serious experience with Iran ballistic missiles, but and this is not a fancy experience to face. But even with that, they can maybe do just several barrages, when they launch from 50 to 100. It was Monday, and we've been waiting for the usual barrage, but nothing happened. If they still believe in astrology, which it seemed like they did for a while during this war, they might attach the next barrage to a big lunar eclipse tomorrow, so we'll see. And there is no reason for them to keep doing that, because when they shoot a lot, we shoot down a lot of them. They fail their general goal, and then when they shoot a little, when they shoot 3 or 5 missiles, we shoot all them down. So if you throw hundreds of millions of dollars at your target, out of which maybe 30 reach it, and the result is what? Kievan citizens sitting for several hours without energy. It is difficult, but this is not worth it for them. And for us, we do have a saying, it's difficult, but it's worth it. Some people have it harder, some people have it a little easier, but we know what we're fighting for. We're fighting to prevent the whole country becoming a big giant bucha and becoming slaves to that regime. And also, next question is weather. Because aviation and fleet do not like bad weather, and weather is favoring us right now. They, of course, will be shooting more. It appears they will continue targeting our infrastructure, but their capabilities are dwindling with every barrage like that. One thing is to launch it, another is to actually guide it to the target. With the quality and with the quality of our defense, even that was a temporary solution for them. both missiles and mobilized, they are not keys to this conflict. They are not the solution to successful completion of this conflict. They don't have any answer to entice us to some peace on their terms. Yeah, they, I guess, were hoping for that. By the way, it came in the news that Turkey, since February, did not let warships of Pacific Fleet, of Russian Pacific Fleet, to enter the war theater. So Turkey had to turn them around, and they did, and they floated further back to the Far East. I mean, they went, right? They don't say they float. Float, it's the shit that floats. But, the quality of their ships, yeah, maybe it's a right way. Oh, by the way, Prigozhin also made another public statement. Prigozhin made a public statement saying that we have interfered, we are interfering, and will continue to interfere with American elections. So, by the way, this is one of the very heavy crimes in the United States, to interfere with elections. So, they're continuing to build that party of war from him, out of him, and his supporters. Why are they doing it? He was an inmate, and according to some data, he was the lowest rank inmate due to some inmate practices. So he's not even fitting also with any of the administrative and bureaucratic systems. He can only be a military figure, he can be an appendage to some other political figure. I don't see why do they want to create a political party out of him. Because, if anything, he can be liquidated within an hour. If somebody really, really wants it, he can disappear in a second. If you really want it, you can get rid of anybody in 1 second, even Putin. But I think it appears that there is a decision made to create a military party in Russia. And that's why all these correspondents and bloggers, as they call themselves, the Russian propagandists, they are supporting that. They're climbing on that pulpit and screaming that Prigozhin is the leader of the military-inclined population, and they're preparing that pulpit to be able to scream later after the war, probably to unite all these military that will come back from the war, to try to unite them under some banner, so they don't run around and cause havoc. It's hard to tell what happened to Prigozhin in prison. I guess it doesn't matter in modern Russia. They're losing all traditions. Even though if he indeed had that interesting part of his biography in prison, people in prison are aware of that. So they are in the know. But with the amount of money they've been ingesting into Prigozhin's private army and everything, I think he can buy his way out of any political or other public attack at his persona. It will likely have some organizational form and success. They'll probably gather some of the ultra-patriotic pro-Putin figures around them, and some of the ones who still want to fight. In reality, they're not the tough army. They're only winning some parts because of additional support, but that image is being created for them, for the reason as if, this is the only detachment, the only group that actually succeeded in something in this war, unlike the other military. So there is some effort being put into that. But this appears to be like a counterweight to the Minister of Defense. This is like a counterweight to the army. Yeah, but what does the army have to rely upon? The whole army story is lost already. Mobilized? No, mobilized. They're not gonna reinforce them. And they're so worn out, I don't think Russian military will ever try to commit a coup or change Putin. And then, basically, all these Prigozhins and Kadyrovs rule them. When Kadyrov brings his detachment to the front general and forces him to apologize or to do some stuff what they want. This is ridiculous, right? This is loss of position, loss of any political power for the Russian military. Back in the day, they were, They were comrade officers. They were military who were not afraid to even resist Stalin as a dictator, who were supporting each other and managed to survive throughout the war and fight against all the repressive machine of Soviet Union and resist it. And even though many of them were actually in prison, many of them were brought from prison to the front to command their troops. Yeah, Rokossovsky was one of them. Yeah, those were the guys. These current generals, they're pathetic. Army is not in the calculations right now in Russia. They are calculating for passionate part of the society. Our army is passionate here in Ukraine because we know what we fight for. Right, here it's basically our civilians who put on the military uniforms and who are fighting for their land and their families. That's a whole other story. Alright, we have one last announcement for today. Our project, our charity project continues with Olexiy, and we finally got data of that boy Bogdan that we told you about. It's been a week. Is that the guy who was evacuated from Bakhmut with the military police? Yes. His both parents got killed, and he was there alone. Now he's living with his aunt. He's 8 years old. This is a picture that Irina Vereshchuk, our minister, took with him. We sent some support to Bogdan, and we have more recipients of help in line, so we'll figure it out in the next couple of days, and we'll send a few more grants out. We're actually doing a few other support payments behind the scenes also, just to some wounded. So, those of you who have not bought any merch, please go, please make a purchase. All that money, all the proceeds will go to support of victims of this war. And these stores are frankly not really ours, just we supply them with designs, and we just accumulate the funds and then we send them out to the victims that we identify. Alright, the last announcement, we actually had a Congress of Russian deputies, Russian congressmen and senators, whoever we have outside of Putin's regime, all the people with some political weight. So we actually will have a stream tomorrow about that, and I became part of the elected body by that Congress. And tomorrow we'll have Andrei Larionov, Ilya Ponomaryov, and Gennady Gudkov. This will be happening at 8 Kiev time, and side note from the privateer station, we will translate that discussion as well. And tomorrow, the usual time, we meet with Olexiy, right? Right. Okay, Tuesday there'll be 2 interesting streams. Privateer station will make an effort to translate both. By the way, Mark, we have nationalized 5 defense companies today. I heard Motor Siege and some others. Yeah, now they're owned by Ministry of Defense, and they're being run by Ministry to provide additional ammo and support to the front. I think this is actually a good piece of news. And as I mentioned also, another little bit, Lebedev, son of Tatiana Tolstaya, a very public figure in Russia. He is on the house 8 and near Golden Gate. He has apartment, and Mark just gave numbers, so if we have some local administration listening to that, perhaps you guys can check on what's going on in his with his property. Why are they owning property throughout Kiev, in the country that they hate so much, whose people they hate so much? It's curious to see who's living there right now. Okay, anyway, see you tomorrow. Subscribe to our channels, and we'll see you. Goodbye. Bye.